Hello everybody and welcome back to another Golang tutorial. So in this video I'm going to be talking about structs and how we can create our own custom types in Golang. Now if you haven't seen another programming language before, then you may not be familiar with the notion of classes. But inside of other programming languages you can pretty much write some syntax like class, tim, and then inside of this class you define a bunch of methods, you define a bunch of attributes, which again you might not know what they are, that's totally fine. And then tim becomes actually a custom object or a custom type that we can use. So to really illustrate this, when we make a variable, right, every variable is some type, and we've gone over this so many times, it's really important in Golang. But if I say something like, var x int equals 5, of course this variable x is an int, and the fact that it's an int gives it some very specific behavior. I can add it to other ints, I can subtract it against other ints, I can use it in specific contexts, and if it was a float, then it would behave a little bit differently, right? It has a different amount of precision, it takes up a different amount of space. All these types have their own kind of like features or different things that are specific to that type, right? And of course we had arrays which acted a little bit differently, we had maps. Each type has its own kind of custom behavior, and that's what I want you to really think about, is that these types here all have their custom behavior, and what we can actually do is make our own types that have their own custom behavior. And the reason we would do that is because sometimes the current types that are given to us are not enough. We actually want to combine and use those together in our own type that makes it more valuable, more readable, just easier to use in our program. And hopefully I can show that to you here. So what I'm going to do is just make a struct that stands for a structure. This is just your own custom type. And as we go through this, it'll make a lot of sense, but there is a lot to explain, so it's kind of incremental. We're going to understand. So I'm going to make a type called point. I'm going to put type point struct, and this is how we set up our own custom structs or types. So we write type, we put the name of the type. Always we start with a capital letter. That's pretty much a convention. You always do that. And then you write struct. Struct defines that this is a custom type, because there's other things that we can do with type. We can actually do type I, and then we can write something like interface. Now I'm not going to show that right now, but in a future video. So just understand that we're saying this is a structure, which really means it's just a custom type that we can use. Okay, so type point struct, and then inside of here, what I actually do is I list the fields that I want to be a part of this struct or of this custom type. So before, when we had types, we only had one type, if that makes sense. We had like var x int. X is just an int, right? But now what we're going to be typing is like var x point is equal to, and we're going to put point like this, and we're going to define what makes up a point. So inside of here, I'm going to put two fields that will define what makes up a point. So I'm going to say x int and then y int like that, and we'll make them both int 32s. So what this is saying is that a point is its own custom type, and it has a field x and a field y. So this point will store some x value and y value for every single point that we make. So if I do something like var x point equals 0.12, what this is saying is let's make a new point that has x equal to 1 and y equal to 2. And obviously, point, I'm just talking about like a two-dimensional point on some graph. So we have an xy value. And of course, what I can do as well is I can actually say, let's change these values. So I'm going to say P1 and P2, 0.1 and 0.2, and we'll make a new point, and maybe this point will be equal to like -5 and 7. So now we have 2 points. One of them has an x value 1, a y value of 2. One of them has an x value -5 and a y value of 7. So you can see where this might be useful, right? If we have kind of objects that we want to represent that we can't just represent with one int value or one map or one array, we make our own custom type. We've called this a point, and now we have point objects, right, that have an x and a y value. Now let me show you what these actually look like when we print them out, and how we can actually have a look at some of the specific attributes of them. So if I go fmt.println, what you can do is, since you have this field x and this field y inside of your point type, you can access those fields directly. So I can say something like p1.x equals, oh no, I'm not going to say equals, sorry, because I'm inside of fmt, but if I print out p1.x, and let's have a look here, and I will actually have to print out or comment this out for now because we're not using it. Okay, so let's print out p1.x, and we see we get the value of 1, right, showing up for us there, because obviously the x value of this point is 1, because when we passed it in, it assigned x equal to 1, y equal to 2, because that's the order that we passed them in. Now, if I change this to y, you guys can probably guess what we're going to get. Let's have a look here, and we get 2. Pretty straightforward. Now here's a cool thing though to have a look at, is that some people oftentimes get confused and they think that this x and y can only ever store one value. So they think when I make this new point p2 that point 1's values will change, right? They won't be 1 and 2. That is incorrect. We can have a bunch of different point objects that all have their own unique x and y values. So look here, if I print p1.y and then I print p2.y right there, you'll see that these are 2 different values and nothing changes. Like, they both can store their own unique values. So we have 2 and 7, right? So these point objects are just both different point objects that each have their own x and y values. So that's really useful, and that makes it a lot easier to do certain things in programming. So I can actually change the value of p1.x. I can change the value of p1.y as well by saying something like p1.x equals, and let's change it to 7, right? So if I go ahead and run this, there won't be anything wrong with the program. Oh, well, because I didn't use p2, but that does actually go ahead and change the value of 1 here to 7. You can directly change the fields. Now these fields don't need to be the same type. In fact, what I can do is say like x, y, and then I could say is on grid or something and make that a bool, right? So now we have another field called is on grid, and that's a Boolean value. And now when I make my point, I need to pass false in there, right? Or I need to pass true, another value, so that we set something for is on grid. So that is the idea behind structs and how you make your own custom points. Because notice these are type point, right? So we're making our own types. This is something that is a little bit difficult sometimes to wrap your head around, but once you get it, it makes things a lot easier. So we have point, that's good. I'm gonna get rid of the is on grid because I don't actually want to use that. And what I'm gonna show you now is actually how we can make types that use other types. So point is a type now. It is treated just like int32, float32, whatever. There's a few small differences, but you can think of it like that, right? Because I can just write type point, no problem whatsoever. Now, what I'll show you as well is that I can define a point using a few different ways to define a point. I don't need to write it like I just did here. The most common way is to do something like p1 colon equals 0.12. Now, this will just automatically infer that this is going to be type point. There'll be no problem with that. But let's say that I want to make a point, but I actually don't know what the y value of my point is yet. I just want to set the x. I don't want to set anything for the y value. Well, what I can do is I can actually say point x colon, I can set a value. So I can say x colon 3 like that. And that is totally valid and fine. That's just going to mean that y will be set equal to whatever the default int32 value is, which is going to be 0. And I'll show you if I fmt dot print line here, p1, that's what ends up happening. So let's have a look down here, and we get 3, 0. So x is 3, y is 0, because I set x, but I didn't set y. Now I could do the other thing too. I could put y like that, and now if we go ahead and print it, we'll see it swaps around, so we get 0, 3. There we go, 0, 3, no problem. So that's another way to define points. I believe that's known as a literal. Now what I want to show you though is that when we start using these kind of structures, this is where pointers become very important. And I'm going to talk more about that in the next video when we get into methods. But I want to show you what happens when I put an and sign like this, because it's something very common that you'll see. I'm saying p1 is actually equal to the pointer to this point. Now, I know that seems like a weird thing to say, but let's run this and have a look at what p1 is now. And let's see. And we get the and sign for this value. So what that's telling us essentially is that this is a pointer. P1 is a pointer to the point that has the values x, y, right, inside of it. So it has those 2 specific values. Now what this means is that if I pass this pointer around to like another function or something, I can modify the value of this point directly. So let me just show you, because we showed this in the pointer one, so I'm kind of building on here. I'm going to say change x, okay? And let's say that we're going to take some point. So we'll say pt point is what we want to take. We're not going to return anything, and we'll just do that. So now again, since this is a type, I can put points up here, no problem, because we've defined it. And what I'm going to do inside of here is I'm just going to say, and sorry, this should actually be an asterisk. I'm going to say pt.x equals 100, okay? And let's have a look at what I want to do now. Okay, so let's say p1 like that. And let's pass that to change x. Let's go change x p1. And then let's actually fmt.print line p1 before and after just so we can see what this looks like. Okay, so what I'm doing right now, and let's just walk through this, I'll slow down for a second here, is I'm taking some point that I've created. So I've made a P1, it's equal to the pointer to the point that is defined by this, right? So before, if I didn't have the pointer, I'm saying this is equal to this point object, so it's the value, right? It's not equal to the address, it's equal to the value of this point. I can still pass it around, I can still use it, but now I've said it's equal to the pointer to this point, which means that I can actually have the reference, so I can change things inside of like a function, right? Which we talked about in previous videos. So I'll start by printing out P1, then I'll call change x on P1, and then I'll print out P1 again, and we'll see if it actually changes the value of x, and then I'll show you a contrast for one that does or doesn't, so it does the opposite of what we just did. So let's have a look at this here. Go run tutorial.go, and let's see what we get. Okay, so we get 0, 3, 103, so clearly it did change it, although we didn't change pt.x anywhere in here, it did actually end up changing it to the value 100, and you can see that these are both still pointers, right? Now what happens if I do this? So let's get rid of the pointer here, and let's get rid of that. And now let's see if any of this changes. So I'm no longer going to pass a pointer when I pass that to change x. I'm actually going to pass the value of P1. So I'm just going to pass that object. Let's have a look at what happens now. We get 0, 3, 0, 3. So we actually didn't end up changing the value inside of the point. Now that's weird. Why did that happen? Well, when we don't pass the pointer of one of these structs to a function, what ends up happening is we actually just make a copy of this point. So we say, okay, we're going to pass the value of point, which is, x is equal to 0, y is equal to 3. We pass that to change x. It kind of makes like a copy of that, and then it changes its own copy's value to be x. So if I go down here and I say fmt.println pt, you'll see that here inside of this function, yes, this pt x value is changed, but down here, it doesn't get changed because we just passed the value. We didn't pass the pointer. And I hope this makes sense because we talked about this a lot in the last video, but I just wanted to show you that that's why I went into that talking about pointers, right? Because they're very important to understand. So if we have a look here and we go run tutorial.go, we see that we get 0, 3, 103, which is this print statement. So this actually did change the point that was here, but down here, it didn't change it. So just keep that in mind. There's some cases where you don't want to pass a pointer. You'd rather just have this object make a copy, right? Or you'd have this function make a copy. But in a lot of situations, you do want to pass the pointer. And when you're passing the pointer, you do the same thing, right? You put an asterisk here to define you're getting a pointer, not the actual value, and then you're good to go. Now, some of you may have noticed, I'm going to delete change x and get out of this example a little bit here, that when I had passed the pointer to that function, I actually didn't need to dereference it before I changed the value of x. So there's this cool thing on structs that lets you do this. So if I have p1 equals a pointer to the point, you would think that what I would have to do is say asterisk p1.x equals like 8 or something, right? Or I would actually have to do this, asterisk p1.x. So I would say, let's get the actual value, right? And then let's change it. So I'm dereferencing the pointer. But the way that structs work is it doesn't matter if you have the pointer or if you have the value, you can directly use this. So you can directly use the dot operator to access any of the fields inside of your struct, so x or y. Again, I know this is getting like pretty confusing, but this is something that we're going to keep going through, so it'll make more sense with the tutorial series. But I just want you to know that it doesn't matter if your, if your struct is a pointer or the value. So if we have the ampersand versus no ampersand, it doesn't make a difference. We can still use this dot operator to access any of the fields inside of the struct. Now, the last thing I'm going to show you is an embedded struct. Now, this might be going a little bit far for some of you guys, but I do need to cover it as it is an important part of Golang. So I'm actually going to say type circle is its own struct. And inside of this struct, what I actually want to have is a point and a radius. So I'm going to start by defining the radius. So I'm going to say radius is a float 64. And I'm going to say that the point is actually type point. Now, what this is pretty much saying is that we actually have a field inside of our circle that points to another struct. And in fact, I'm actually going to put an asterisk here to define that this is a pointer to the point, because when we have a circle, I want to have some point where the middle of the circle is. So we could actually call this like the origin if we wanted, or we could call this like center. Let's just do that. And that's equal to a point. So we're going to use a struct inside of another struct. So how would I actually go about doing that? Well, there's multiple ways I can do it. So first of all, I can define a point like this with the ampersand. So I'm saying this is a pointer to this point. And then what I can make a circle. So I could say C1 colon equals, let's say circle. And then inside of here, we need a radius. So let's pass like 4.56, 4.56. And then let's pass P1 as our pointer, right? Or as our point. So we're saying that we have 4.56, which is the radius. And then since the center is a pointer to a point, we simply pass the pointer to the point that we defined here, which is P1. Now I don't have to do that. I could also do this. I could write the ampersand point, because again, we want the pointer, not the value. And then I could put like 4.5 in here. And now I've said I have a circle with radius 4.56, and then I have a point inside of the circle with the value 4.5. Now, this is where it gets interesting. How do I access x, y from this point? Well, let's have a look at how we can do this here. So I'm going to delete P1, and I'm going to go and I'm going to start by just fmt.println C1, and I want to show you what this looks like. So let's go run tutorial.go, and let's have a look at this. Okay, so 4.56, and then we have some pointer. Notice that's what that's printing out, right? So now let me show you what happens when I print out C1.center. So C1.center gives me, let's have a look at here, the actual point right here. So it's saying it is a pointer, but it's giving me 4.5. So if I wanted to access the x value of my point, what I would do is do c1.center.x. And what that is saying is I want to access the x attribute from the center, which is that point, right? And there you go, I'm able to access it. So that's how you access an embedded struct. And same thing, if you wanted to change something on the embedded struct, you do c1.center.y or center.x. Now it's important that usually when you have an embedded struct, you use the pointer to it, not just a struct itself. We can talk about that more as we get into methods in the next video. But what you can also do, and there's just so many things with structs, I'm just trying to show you guys as much as I can, is you don't have to actually give it a name. If you want to have an embedded struct inside of another struct, you can just write that struct like this. So if I just write this like asterisk point, you can see that I'm not getting any errors up here. Here I am because I'm referencing center. But what this says now is if you just put point, it will just, as long as none of the attributes from here are the same as what's inside of here, you can just do this now. You can do c1.x like that, and that will actually reference the x field from the point. So since I'm feeding in a point here, and there's no attributes that are the same name from point and circle, I can reference x and y from the point from inside circle without having to call some intermediate name like center. So I can just do c1.x, right? So if I go c1.x, I go run tutorial.go, we get 4, no problem. And I can do c1.y as well. And then of course I could reference c1.radius. So that's kind of how this works when you do an embedded struct. You can just put one directly inside, or you can give it a name. And then if you give it a name, you use the name and then the dot operator for whatever attribute it is you want to reference. Okay, so I feel like that was a lot. I totally understand that this might be a little bit confusing to some of you guys. But again, I just need to go through this. This is now where we're getting into some of the more complicated features of Golang. In the next video, we're going to talk about methods, which are actually really important, and that will hopefully shine some light on a little bit more how these kind of structs and types actually work. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next YouTube video.